numbers so that we have a clearer understanding of what the numbers are talking about. So again, you're welcome to Data Chart. Data Chart is a production of NOI Polls Limited. I am Nelly Ohuche, Head Corporate Communications, NOI Polls Limited. We'll take a very short break and we'll be right back right after this break. Alright, Abuja, you're welcome. It's still Data Chart on Repower 100.5 FM Abuja, and yes, we're having a very beautiful conversation today. We're looking at citizens' trust in electoral integrity. Alright, so from this week up until probably the elections in 2023, we're going to take out one edition every month to actually interrogate poll findings that will be centered around the elections. So we're going to start an election series every month, and we're going to look at various issues around the elections from now up until the 2023 elections. So we'll hope that you follow us up all through this period. So on today's edition of Data Chart, it's going to be citizens' trust in electoral integrity. You know, when a people choose those who govern them in a free and fair election, it honors the provisions of the Constitution of Nigeria. That provision states that sovereignty belongs to the people. When this is marred with electoral irregularities, it erodes the trust of the electorate in the process. Consequently, this does not reflect the will of the people. So on today's edition, we're going to be looking at citizens' trust in electoral integrity. And we have in the house the Senior Programs Officer, Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, PLAC, Ako Obaju, is in the house, and he'll be helping us unbundle some of the findings of the Citizens' Trust in Electoral Integrity poll that was recently conducted by NOI Polls. Aku, you're welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Nigerians.
Great to have you here.
I'm happy to be here.
All right, Aku, elections, that's the conversation that we've been having for a while now. Let's even start with the basics. Okay, just before we get into this conversation, let's even look at what the polls are saying. Like I said, there was a poll conducted, election poll. So that poll was conducted recently, about 2 weeks ago, and it looks at citizens' trust in electoral integrity. So let's run through the findings of the poll, because that's we're going to hinge the conversations that we're having today on the findings of that poll. And we have Debe Wanze. He is a part of the Social Research Unit of NOI Polls. He will be running through the poll findings, and when we get back, we head straight into the conversation.
Results from the recent election polls conducted show that 69% of adult Nigerians believe that their vote truly counts. This proportion cut across both gender and the 6 geopolitical zones. The poll had subsequently asked, do you have plans to register in time for the 2023 general elections? To which 80% mentioned that yes, they already have their PVC. 9% said yes, they have already registered but are yet to collect their PVC. Another 8% said yes, they have plans, and 3% said no, they do not have any plans of registering. The poll also asks, are you looking forward to voting in the 2023 general elections? To which the majority, 93%, acknowledge that yes, they have plans and are looking forward to voting in the 2023 general elections. So the poll had asked, in your opinion, do you think INEC will conduct a free and fair election come 2023 general election? To which almost 6 in 10, that is 58%, said yes, they think INEC will conduct a free and fair elections in 2023, whereas 42% disclosed that they do not think INEC will conduct a free and fair election during the general elections in 2023. Probing further, 24% of those who said yes, they think INEC will conduct a free and fair election disclosed that they have that confidence because of INEC's previous performance, whereas 44% out of the 42% who do not think the elections will be free and fair believe that corruption will be a major factor in INEC's underperformance in that election. These are some of the highlights from the recent election polls conducted by NOI polls. Thank you.
All right, that was Ndebe Wanze from the Social Research Unit of NOI polls, and he just ran through the recently conducted electoral integrity poll. All right, so I'll come back to Akpo Obadu. He, like I said earlier, he is policy and he is the Senior Programs Officer, Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, that's PLAC. Okay, so we've seen what the polls are saying. Let's look at, okay, let's start from here. 58% of Nigerians are certain that INEC will conduct a free and fair elections in 2023 general election. I like that people are positive about this. What does electoral integrity mean in practice? I mean, if we are saying, if Nigerians are saying, if 58% of Nigerians, that's about 6 in 10 Nigerians are saying that they are certain that INEC will conduct a free and fair election. This boils down to trust. What does this mean? And when we say things like electoral integrity, what does it also mean in practice?
Thank you, Nelly. From the poll, what we can deduce about the results is that more and more citizens are beginning to trust INEC more than they trusted the commission in the past. And what that means is that more accountability, responsibility is being placed on INEC's shoulder. They expect that INEC will be open with election logistics, with voting process, with deployment, including disseminating or proactively sharing information on challenges that the Commission may be having, and as well as even the procurement processes. But at the end of the day, INEC will be able to provide clear information to the public without people having to look for this information on the procurement processes, on deployment, on challenges with the systems that they have in place. And for me, this is significant that 58% of the respondents are saying INEC will conduct a free and fair election. They are saying INEC will be more open, INEC will be more transparent, and will be able to communicate their challenges to the public when the time arises. So this is a clear indication that INEC has to do more. If you translate it the other way, they are asking INEC to do more.
Great. All right. We also have with us to help us unbundle the findings of this poll, we have Safia Bichi. She is Head of Knowledge Management and Learning, Yaga Africa. Safia, you're welcome.
Thanks for having me. Good evening.
Good evening. All right, Safia, Nigerians are actually eager, looking forward to, I mean, this is one of the most anticipated elections, maybe ever. And we have 93% of Nigerians, according to our polls, looking forward to voting in the 2023 election. That's exciting. And everybody, 93%, that is everybody, because that's 9 in 10 persons. So that's basically everybody looking forward to the elections. 69% of adult Nigerians are certain that their votes will count. Most people actually insist that votes don't count. I mean, we hear that a lot. Our votes don't count, so why should we even vote? But it's a good thing that people anticipate it. It's a good thing that, like the poll findings said, that 58% of Nigerians are certain that INEC will conduct a free and fair election. But then again, does votes really count in Nigeria? And why do, I'm asking this question for those who keep saying that it really doesn't count. Does votes really count? Why do we think in this next election, the votes will count. Why do we think so? Why are Nigerians thinking that the votes will count this time? And for those who think that it doesn't count,
I think the result of the poll, first of all, give a reflection of what Nigerian voters think. The fact that we have 93% shows some level of enthusiasm, voter enthusiasm, which is commendable, and it's an opportunity for all stakeholders to latch into, to ensure that we make this aspiration come to play. But again, I like the fact that 69%, that's about every 7 in 10 Nigerians, trust that the election, their votes will count. And you know that except you believe that your vote will count, you will not be encouraged to turn out and vote on election day. One thing I find a bit worrisome is the fact that even though we had people believing that their votes will count, about 23% said that they're going to defend their mandate. But we also had 10% trusting INEC. And I think it's important for INEC and other stakeholders to begin to work to build the image of the Electoral Commission. We can say that in the past few elections, we've seen even the 2 off-cycle elections that just concluded. We can say that to an extent, there's some level of INEC, there's some level of INEC has demonstrated some level of independence, and that's why if you look at the conversation post both Ekiti and Osun elections, the conversations move away from whether INEC rigged or not to whether political parties were buying votes or not buying votes, whether it's a positive one or not, but the attention is gradually moving away from INEC. But the question, back to your question, why should people trust that their vote will count? A lot of things are happening. We have a new Electoral Act 2020 that has looked at some of the gaps we had.
Okay, we're going to look at that Electoral Act, and you're going to help us explain that in a bit. Yeah. Okay, so let's do the Osun election. That's the most recent thing that we looked at. It has come, it has gone. The people's mandate seemed to have been honored. Can we confidently say it was a free and fair election? Okay, I'll throw this to both of you. Do us an assessment of how that election went. What are the takeaways from the Osun election?
I think probably people will say that the election is fair, free and fair, as compared to Ekiti elections because an incumbent lost the elections. But these are not the yardstick for measuring the credibility of elections. There are different indicators for looking at credibility of elections. One of the indicators is to look at the legal framework to which the election is being administered. Is it in line with standard practices? Yes, our legal framework is in line with standard practices to have guaranteed a free and fair election. Then going back to the election administration, how was the election administration managed? INEC had a timeline of over 10 activities, and if we look at the timeline, for those of us that track INEC activities, INEC was consistent with the timeline on its activities. INEC did not lack in meeting up to the timeline of the activities. That already gave us an idea of whether in terms of election administration it will go well or not. I think in terms of the actions of all the stakeholders apart from political parties, there has been significant improvement if you look at what we had from the past election. And despite the fact that an incumbent won, there are a lot of things that allow the elections to succeed. For those of us that were able to tally the election result, we realized that the votes that reflect from the polling unit were the same with the votes announced by INEC, which shows that the election was free and fair. So based on this, the legal framework, the election procedure, and even the introduction of the new technology, which is the BVAS. You know that the BVAS is an enhancement of the smart card reader, and the fact that INEC stick to its guidelines of using BVAS as the only means for accreditation at polling unit, it also helped. We could also look at access to polling unit. INEC created more polling unit, even though there were challenges in terms of the distribution of voters across the polling unit. But again, we can to a large extent draw a conclusion and say that this has also provided some level of access to voters on election day. And if you look at the general timing and general commencement of the elections, even though if you compare 2018 Osun and 2022 Osun, both elections started a bit early, and even though at a particular point it looked like the 2022 will be lacking, but I think INEC picked up in terms of logistics at a particular point. We saw that the election ended just in less than 24 hours after election kickoff. I think the only thing for Osun that would have created some gap, because as of 10 p.m. we knew that it's only about 65% of racks that were activated, but we can commend INEC for the fact that they were able to meet up even through the midnight, and most racks were activated. On election day, there was generally a good commencement, even though the commencement in some places were a bit late, but there was a catch-up, and that was why the election went the way it went. But again, you know that from this election, there's also a new system that INEC introduced, that is the RF, the uploading of election results. This also provided voters. This was not just at providing results, but at providing some level of transparency to the election. We know that voters or any individual can access polling unit results from the IRF system. So the process, the legal framework, the election administration procedure, that's the election guideline, has taken some steps to provide some level of access to transparency and access to voters, the polling unit result to voters. So we can say there's a significant improvement. But you know, whenever we're having this conversation, we look at the general elections, and I think we should not go to sleep. The general elections can surprise us.
Okay. I need his touch briefly on that.
Looking at Osun and Ekiti, and of course from what my colleague Safia just said, there are several indicators to track when you are looking at free and fair. I would say that the two elections were free from maybe interferences. You know, INEC deploy as they should. They move the distribution of sensitive materials to a neutral environment, so they distributed from their offices, they deploy on time. We didn't have incidents of people obstructing INEC movement to the rack or even attacking INEC officials, you know. For me, those are indicators. But to look at it as being fair, I would say that Osun and Ekiti still has a long, we can't call it a fair election yet, because there are several indicators you will look at. One is that if more vote buying was at play, the candidates who do not have money, where do they come in the scheme of things? If with the distribution of polling unit, we still had polling units that were not in neutral environments, some in private places. On election day in Osun, the INEC monitoring team were moving polling units from some palaces to road, so people could exercise their vote, because of course in a particular polling unit, voters said they were not going to go into that compound because the polling unit was in a palace. And so those are different indicators. How many persons with disabilities were given the same opportunities, you know, to be part of the system? When we say fair, of course, we also look at the political processes that led to the emergency of the candidates, you know. Or you look at the entire political parties that participated in both Osun and Ekiti. At least in Ekiti, we saw some women, you know, contending for these positions. We didn't see any persons with disability. Whether anybody bought form is another issue to talk about entirely. In Osun, voters did not recognize persons with albinism as PWD, and so did not accord them special consideration to be on a special queue to vote easily and go. But of course, if you aggregate all these factors, you can say that there was a great improvement in the elections that we have had recently compared to what we've been having in the past.
All right, I'll stay on you. Safia was trying to talk about, you know, the electoral laws and reforms and all of that. From our poll findings, 10% stated their votes will count because of the new electoral law. So I want us to look at, you know, the provisions of this electoral law that will ensure that INEC will deliver a credible election. I'll stay on you.
Yeah. First and foremost is the provision supporting the use of electronic device. Because for the first time, we now have electronic device in the system to do accreditation and as well as transmission of results. So they say INEC can determine the mode of transmission. So the power has been given to INEC to determine, and INEC is saying that of course we will still do manual, but according to the law, you will still do manual, but you can then transmit this result from the polling unit into the result viewing portal automatically, so that where the manual results are not available, INEC then go to the site and recollect for those polling units. These are some of the provisions that can encourage people to say the process will be better. We can get involved and nothing will happen to our vote. Our votes will count. Another thing is that without the beavers, without proper accreditation by the electronic device, you cannot vote. In the previous act, there was no provisions to use the record on the smart card readers. But now, the measure of overvoting is based on what is available electronically on the beavers.
Okay.
And so this is a system that is giving people courage. But whether this will translate to actual vote in the 2023 general elections are questions we need to ask ourselves, and there are several reasons. One is that the turnaround rate for the beavers needs to improve.
Okay.
In Ekiti, we had an average of 3 minutes in some location, about 40-something% of the location, and then had less in majority of the polling unit. That also improved in Osun, where we had 2 minutes per voter. But it still has a challenge with that, because the electoral period is just for 6 hours, except there are a lot of people on queue at 2:30 p.m. And so if it's accrediting, the beaver is accrediting a voter per 2 minutes, it means that in an hour they would have accredited only 30 voters. In a polling unit that has 500 voters, and if they actually turn up by 2:30, INEC, if they started early by 8:30, they would have accredited only 180 voters. Of course, INEC is deploying 2 smart card readers, and that will translate to about 400 plus or minus. But we want a faster turnaround. That's one. 2 is whether the ongoing CVR, will enable people to really register. A lot of civic groups have done work to mobilize citizens to create platforms, but INEC needs to take responsibility. In 2011, when this first registration for permanent voters card started, INEC, the Jega Commission, did it at polling unit level. So what is stopping the Mahmoud Commission from doing this even at the ward level? In some states, they are rotating the devices, the registration from one ward to the other. Recently, a lot of civic groups have gotten involved and been able to mobilize citizens. We saw what the Yaga did with the carnival in Abuja and Lagos and other cities. That brought a lot of people. But in places where people have no access to voting centers and there are more people, even if you want to vote, you trust the system that your vote will count. If you don't have smart card reader, the permanent voters card, you cannot vote. People will come to polling unit, and INEC officials will not have time to ask them whether they've registered before, and all they needed to do was just transfer. They will just register them afresh, and by the time INEC run through their audit, will remove the new registration. So there's a possibility that a lot of people will not get yes. And after these PVCs are produced, we are talking about an exercise that started about a year ago. In recent time, INEC said they've started distribution of PVC for people who did from that July or so till December. January till this moment, at this point, we don't have information if INEC has produced the PVC. And so these are questions to ask.
Okay.
This trust we have in the system that our vote will count, can it be translated into tangible results? Can all stakeholders work towards achieving it? Citizens are saying they are interested and they are showing enthusiasm, but how do we make it work?
Okay, we've talked about a lot of people registering, and we're grateful to Yaga Africa for what they've done with helping people register, more like mobilizing, as it were. If we look at our poll findings from the Electoral Integrity Poll, it shows that 80% of adult Nigerians nationwide claim they already have their permanent voters card. 80%. 9% claim they have registered but have not collected their PVCs. Also, 8% has indicated willingness to register in time. We've seen, this huge turnout of, Nigerians and this has lasted over a few months. I think a month ago I was at INEC office, and it was a mammoth crowd. And there were a lot of restrictions. You can't come in, you can't stand here, you can't do this, and you can't. And people take out an entire day, days, sometimes weeks, to do this. We're trying to register. People are trying to pick up their PVCs. Yet, the poll findings is telling us 80% of Nigerians have collected theirs. So, who are all these people, which includes me, who haven't collected? Are we the 9%? Because I do not think that the number of people we saw at
the
carnival and the number of people I saw at INEC office are 9% of Nigeria. I do not believe that. So how do we? I don't know what to say. How do we work around this thing so that it makes it easier? Because when you look at the registration and the collection of the PVCs, we go to the banks for ATM cards. These are cards with security fittings to secure our monies, and our information. Yet it takes as little as 5 minutes to process and to retrieve, an ATM card. On the other hand, INEC registration seems to take a lifetime, and how can this process be simplified for registration, for PVC collection? What do we need to do? I'll throw this to both of you. I need us, because this is a very serious conversation. My office, NOI poll, organizes every staff almost every week to go to INEC office to go and get what you go there and you can't even get past the gate. How do we get INEC to simplify this thing?
So this is the process, and it's not like I'm holding brief for INEC. For some of us that have worked close to voter registration for a long time, you understand that the PVC doesn't work like the ATM card. Okay. The introduction of the BVAS will likely help. Is one of the steps that I think in the nearest future INEC will use to address some of the challenges. The security features on the ATM is not like the security features on the PVC. Okay. But what is happening is that with the introduction of the BVAS, the security features is being gradually moved from the ATM, from the card, to the machine. So before now, the card reader had no security feature. But now your details are on the card reader. That's the reason why if you put your hand, it shows. If it's not there, it can read your officials.
Our ATM cards do that.
The security is different for those that don't tech, and that's why you can't produce it the way. But now that the security is moving to the machine, moving forward, probably INEC can begin to produce cards the way they produce ATM because the features is being moved. I would like to say that the sensitivity of PVC is more than an ATM card. It will be in an error for us to compare the sensitivity. The truth is that in this country, the most sensitive card is the PVC. So we should not undermine the challenges that goes around or the process that goes into production of this PVC. Despite the fact that your NIM requires your futures, do you know that voters are even worried that on election day, there's a provision that if your fingerprint does not read, the machine can read the officials. Voters are raising issues. So issues around elections and legitimacy of leadership is a very sensitive issue. And sometimes we need to also understand where these things are coming from. And like I said, because I'm privy to this information because I've worked on voter registration for some time. But I think these are feedback that INEC is getting, and this is a platform to also say, INEC, what are the strategies we should take to ensure that we simplify this? Even though we understand that the sensitivity, but sometimes we're tempted to feel like it has equal. You can't wake up and just change your PV. I can wake up if my ATM cards get missing. I can just go and request for another one. It's not the same with PVC. And the sensitivity of my ATM cards is not, even though my money is there, it's more important to me, but not to the whole Nigerian. But that's the difference. But again, going back to your initial question on the new legal framework and the citizen confidence, I think like Ako said, legislation of electronic vote, it can be electronic voting, or the introduction of technology into our electoral system has also helped. Then again, the timeline, if you observe, there's a change in timeline. early commencement of primaries, early commencement of different things. And we hope that it will also address issues around logistics on election day, even though we understand that logistics issues are different conversation. If you had followed Ekiti and Osun elections, the Ekiti election had to bring, it took the way of Ekiti to call them to swear an oath, then you had to swear an oath to ensure that they did not jeopardize this. And it actually worked, that helped. And despite all the contracts INEC have been having. So now coming to the national elections, I'm not sure we can have, because in my place, I don't, in where I come from, for instance, they might not honor the oath signing.
Yeah.
In another place, they will honor. But these are some of the things we need to look at. There are a lot of devices and factors, but I think moving to the election, we need to engage all stakeholders. I think the focus has always been on INEC. Now, beyond INEC, there's a significant improvement in terms of INEC capacity to manage elections. Why not also look at other stakeholders involved, even political parties? What are they doing? Issues of security agencies, what are they doing to undermine the process? And again, talking about vote buying, how will it play out moving to the elections? And the reason why vote buying is coming in every day is because the election laws, the legal framework, the guidelines, and the election administrative procedures are making it difficult for one person to alter the process. Now the political parties are going the other way around to ensure that they buy voters, or to stop voters, prevent opponents from voting in an election. So what do we do moving to the election? Let's also go back to, I think it's something we all need to do, is to go back to, and do an appraisal of Ekiti and Osun to look at, from the new provisions of the legal framework, what are the gains, what are the gaps, what are the opportunities as we move forward to the, we move into the 2023 election. I think we're already in the era of the general election.
Okay, the phone lines, but I would like Aku to comment on, just touch on the conversation that you've just had now. But we would like to open the phone lines and have people call in, and we'd like to hear from Nigerians if they believe their votes will count, in this in the next election. Why do we believe that the votes will count? What needs to be done, or the process that needs to be put in place for the votes to count? So the numbers to call are 0818 4270 287. I'll take that number again, 0818 4270 287. You can also call us on 0818 4270 265. I take that again, 0818 4270 265. Aku, what's your take on this conversation? Okay, we have a call. All right, let's see who we have here. Hi, hello, good evening.
This is Anthony calling.
Anthony, where are you calling from?
From Gidamango.
All right, let's hear you.
I have issues with those figures you are reading out.
All right.
I want to know how widespread your population is. Is this just the people in Abuja, or is it national, sampling you are taking?
All right, it's a nationwide poll.
The nationwide poll.
Yes.
And the cost of Nigeria are telling that 80% have collected their PVC.
So what's the complaint?
I don't trust those figures.
All right. Okay, but what do you think the situation is? Have you gotten your PVC yet?
No.
All right. When did you get it?
Around 2012 or thereabout.
All right. So you're not part of those people who are going to sleep at INEC office.
No. I don't like industry.
All right. But moving forward, what are the changes you'd like to see? What are the improvements you'd like to see with INEC?
Well, I would like, on election day particularly, I would like it to come early, start the process on time. I like the givers don't give us headache. So that is where we find the serious issues. So we line up under the sun, and they keep delaying us. Eventually we will not vote. You see, time has gone for just. So that is it.
All right.
Election day protocols, I will be happy.
All right. Do you think that your vote counts?
Well, the Osun election has really shown that, yes, I think there's hope.
All right. I like the fact that you say there is hope. All right. Thank you, Anthony, for calling.
Okay.
All right. Please keep the calls coming. We'd like to hear from Nigerians. What do you think about the 2023 election? What are you anticipating? Do you think the votes count? What improvements would you like to see? Hello.
Yes.
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening.
What's your name? Where are you calling from? Say that again. Could you please turn down the volume of your radio sets?
Is it okay now?
It is okay. What's your name again?
Chief Njoku from Army Estate.
Chief Njoku, you're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, let's hear you.
Can you hear me?
Let's hear you, yes.
I have two reasons why I'm pretty sure that this thing will not count.
All right, let's hear it.
The desperation of vote buying, most especially from the ruling party. They started it from the delegates down to the polling booth. If honorable members who came for a delegate, none of them is a hungry man, could be bought over by one of their parents to enable him to vote. To win. It's unbelievable.
All right.
Number one.
Okay.
Number two is bringing in unbelievable bishops to the there.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
That's number two.
Okay.
Now, our problem in every election has been INEC. And I have my reasons. Could I state my reasons?
State your reasons, but please be very factual and be very brief.
My reasons are this. If the Nigerian election could go the way we are thinking, the way you conducted this year subject, Nigerians will be very happy. But it is not going to go that way.
Why do you think it will not go that way? In 30 seconds. Okay.
Oh, move.
All right.
The INEC chairman. He has been there for 8 years. There is no amount of money he hasn't got by himself. The Lord in heaven is hosting, is conducting this election. The cry of the masses has reached Lord here. And there is a kind of money we collect. The Lord may not give you grace to eat that money.
All right, let's not just throw stones. Let's not throw stones. Like I said, if you're calling in, please let's be brief, let's be factual with what we say, and let's not throw stones. Hello.
Hello.
Good evening. You're welcome. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, my name is Taru. I'm calling from Cuba.
All right, let's hear you.
Yes. Interesting findings. Well, I want to seek a clarification here. The 80% or thereabout, is it for registered voters?
Yes, that's for registered voters.
Okay, registered voters have collected their PVC.
Yes.
Okay. That's interesting. So, on credibility, I think INEC is gaining their credibility bit by bit with the two elections, the Ekiti and Osun. Then I hope in 2023 we'll see a better process.
All right. Thank you very much for calling. All right. All right. Let's see who else we have before we go back to our guests as we wrap up. Hi, good
This
evening.
is Debe calling from Jahi.
Oh, you're welcome. Let's hear you.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly respond to the caller who has talked about his questions about the figures.
Okay.
So I also had my question, but the quick online search showed that we have about 84 million Nigerians who have collected or who have their PVCs. And if you look at the adult population, that's about 100 plus, maybe 104 million. 24 by 104 million comes up to about that 80%. So those figures check out, in my view.
Thank you very much for that clarification, David. Thank you very much. All right. We can see Nigerians' concern. We'll take a very short break. When we come back, we'll just wrap up this conversation. Nigerians are concerned whether their votes will count or not. So we'll just take a short break, come back, and we'll wrap up this conversation. All right, you're welcome back. It's still Data Chat, and as a wrap up, I'd like to throw those questions to our guests as we wrap up this conversation. If you haven't been following us, we've been looking at citizens' trust in electoral integrity, and we're trying to unbundle the findings of a recently conducted poll by NOI polls on citizens' trust in electoral integrity. Okay, the poll, we've also findings from the poll have actually shown that as regards important procedures that INEC needs to put in place to ensure a free and fair election, 27% say transparency in electoral process, 23% say increased security at polling units, and 7% say professionalism and independence of INEC. So I'm going to ask both of you, I'd like you to respond to this question in 1 minute as we wrap up. What factors must be put in place to ensure elections have integrity? And what are the procedures or the institutional mechanisms for delivering a credible election?
Okay, I think INEC's guideline has already has made up to standard because the guideline was drawn from the legal framework. First is for the Electoral Commission to ensure that it sticks to the provision of its guideline. Because if you set a guideline for yourself, you're expected to live by the guideline. So for anybody that is assessing the entire electoral cycle, the person will assess the entire electoral cycle based on the guidelines for the election. So first is to ensure that the guideline is followed, the timeline for the elections are followed, and to avoid last-minute election day postponement, INEC should stick to its guideline, and that's one. Then secondly, INEC should cultivate a habit of communicating more to the public. Okay. We know that in the of recent after 2019 election, INEC has do have quarterly meeting with stakeholders. But I think beyond that, and learning from 2019 elections, INEC should step up to communicating, sharing updates with the public on their progress towards the general elections. This will kind of build citizens' confidence in the process, and it will also take away issues of speculation around the electoral process, the election timetable, and all other speculations that usually comes with the elections.
All right, Apple.
So in addition to what Cynthia said, INEC must be very clear on their logistics plan. At this point, INEC then has put behind Osun and Ekiti, and so we should have a clear roadmap for delivering on the logistics. Not that we'll be hearing of weather affected movement of flight and all of that, because the volume of voters ballot papers that will be produced for 2023 will be very, very heavy. And so INEC need to get that right. Again, talking about integrity, INEC must be independent. And independence, I don't mean just individuals, but as a commission and as Nigerians supporting the independence of INEC. At this point, INEC has no full complement of the commission. So the president should nominate people who are not partisan, who belongs to no political party or have no affiliation, or perhaps even renominate the resident electoral commissioners whose tenure has expired. If their terms have expired, INEC need to have full complement going into 2023 general elections.
All right, in 30 seconds each, what is your advice to Nigerians as we prepare for 2023 elections? 30 seconds.
Okay, so if you don't want to decide for yourself, others will decide for you. So come with me, turn out and vote on election.
So it's as simple as that. Go out, get your PVC. Don't say our vote don't count. Come out and put demand on the system.
All right.
Get registered and make sure you receive your PVC to vote on election day.
All right. We have been looking at the first in the series of election, election series. Today we've looked at citizens' trust in electoral integrity, and there is a poll to that effect. You can check it out on www.noi-polls.com. And we have had with us policy and legal from the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, that's PLAT. We've had Aku Obadu. He is Senior Programs Officer, PLAT. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Nelly.
All right, we've also had from Yaga Africa, the Head of Knowledge Management and Learning, Safia Bichi. Thank you so much for having been part of this. And this is where we're doing the cuttings for today's edition of Data Chart. We're going to be here again next week, same time, 5 to 6 p.m. But to all Nigerians, as the country moves towards the 2023 elections, adequate preparation by INEC is important to ensure that elections are credible and free from irregularities. And to everyone, we say go out and register and make sure you collect your PVCs. This is all we can take. Till next week, do have a fantastic Friday. I am Nelly Obuche, Head Corporate Communications, NOI Polls Limited. Have a good night.